Many of the slaves brought to America were Muslims. Forbidden from practicing their faith, they found secret ways to keep Islam alive. Calling the faithful to prayer here in Mississippi is Abdul Rashid. He believes that one way they achieved this was through music.
I cried, Lord, please stop her. Ain't gonna get drunk no more. The Africans brought the music here as slaves. People saying blues came from Mississippi. I don't think so.
I've been hearing about the link between the call to prayer and the songs that slaves used to sing in the fields. How are they similar?
The call to prayer. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. If you ever went to a Baptist church, then you can hear this in a Baptist church.
Really?
All of the Baptists, especially the Southern Baptists, they start off with a cappella singing. The whole congregation is singing, you know. I love the Lord, He heard my cry. You know, because the entire Quran was basically chanted in that sense, you know, and it was chanted basically in that minor scale.
You see that connection, do you? When you're singing things that are deeply embedded within the sort of African-American experience and the blues.
Not only that, but that was one of the things that guided me to Islam.
Really?
Yes. The music. And when you start reading, when I was introduced to the Quran, that was...
You found it there as well?
I found it there as well. So I think, for my opinion now, this is just my opinion, and with my opinion and $1 and something, you can get a cup of coffee, okay? But this is my opinion, that this entire movement is a spiritual movement and is geared towards Islam.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Like Abdul, more and more people of all ethnicities are finding their way to Islam. A third of all Muslims in America, about 2 million, are converts. The people at the mosque in Jackson are convinced that this is having a positive impact on the entire nation. Okolo Rashid is one of the founding members here.
We're happy to have you. We heard so much about you. Yes, your
I hope
show.
all good.
All good, all good, and we're just happy to have you.
Okolo is involved in a new research project with 25 other historians. They believe their discoveries will not only rewrite the history of Islam in America, but transform our understanding of African cultures.
I think we're leading the way, actually.
As part of this initiative, Okolo founded the International Museum of Muslim Cultures, the first in America. Research here suggests the number of Muslim slaves was much greater than previously thought.
1/3 of all of the enslaved Africans that were brought to the Americas actually were Muslims. Nobody knows this. This is kind of new cutting-edge information because when we read our history books, we don't see that. We have one of the great stories here in Mississippi in a place called Natchez, Mississippi. We have the story of Prince Abdul Rahman Ibrahim. He was an African Muslim prince and scholar. Came out of the area around Gambia, and he was actually enslaved in Natchez for over 40 years, and we have that story.
But you're a combination of all these things that's unique here to the Deep South, aren't you? I mean, Africa, American, and Muslim. And why is it important to stress, I mean, in this exhibit, in your work, this missing link of Islam in this mix?
The most important reason is that it's going to help the African American to become a first-class citizen as opposed to a second-class citizen. And this whole standing up for rights, fight for freedom, leading the whole effort in America for reforming America and bringing America to respect its own constitution, or blending, is really that's what makes me optimistic about the future.
This corner of the exhibition is really interesting because you've got real evidence of this link between Islam and slavery in Mississippi. And Ibrahim Abdurrahman, who was known as the prince among slaves, who was sold into slavery for 40 years before winning his freedom and going to live as a free man in Liberia. And I understand that there are his descendants still living in the United States, and I'm going to try and find them.
I know she heard me calling. She looked back and waved her hand.
now see that what's at the heart of the story of Islam in America is the story of slavery. And on this issue, America was divided. As early as the 1770s, some Americans were calling for the abolition of slavery. One of these, Thomas Jefferson, proposed forming a colony in Africa to take freed slaves. But it wasn't until 1863, after the Civil War, that slavery was finally abolished. With it came the economic collapse of the southern states which depended on slaves. The big plantations fell to ruin and 2 million freed slaves headed for the northern cities. For those who stayed behind, life remained brutal. Well into the 20th century, lynching and murder were everyday facts of life for African Americans across the South. African Americans have been telling me that here in Mississippi, a place I've always associated with prejudice, they can now be Muslim without prejudice, and that this is an essential part of being a Muslim in America, the fight against prejudice and the struggle to be free. And it was in pursuit of this struggle that in the early part of the 20th century, millions of African Americans abandoned the South and they headed north, which is where I'm going next. I'm catching the night train to Chicago, following in the footsteps of millions of freed slaves, drawn to the city by the promise of jobs in the factories and stockyards, and above all, with the hope of living a life free from prejudice. But they did have another option, to sail for Liberia, the colony America established for freed slaves in Africa. It was a stark choice: scratch a living in America's ghettos or build a nation from scratch. The Muslim Prince Ibrahim of Mississippi that Okolo told me about was among the first to sail for Liberia, where he dreamt of establishing Islam. But the early settlers encountered little but disease and hardship, and Prince Ibrahim barely saw the completion of the first settlement before he died. Modern Liberia has suffered a succession of civil wars, and fleeing the last of these was Ibrahim's great-great-great-great-grandson, who has turned this story on its head. He fled war-torn Liberia to find freedom in America. His name is Artemus Gay.
Yes, that's right. It all started when the Civil War started in Liberia. I came to this country, and it was just a sheer sense of understanding my own country's history that I spent hours in the library just trying to find out the history of the colonization from Mississippi to Liberia. And then I did find out, yes, there was a ship manifesto, and on one of the ship's name, I found her great-grandfather's name. His name was Abdul Rahman Ibrahim Sori. He was one of the sons of Sori Maudo, who was an al-Imami.
He was a prince, but also, clearly by his name, a Muslim.
A Muslim. That's very important to realize that he understood science. He understood medicine, and that for me was like winning the lottery, or amazing.
Yeah.
Roots in reverse. Here I have to come from Africa to find my own roots. Here I have to come from Africa to seek refuge, and I found Chicago as a place, an intellectual place for me, a spiritual home for me, and above all, it has one of the largest collections of books in Africa. You will find nowhere in Africa. It's right here in Chicago.
How important was it that Abdurrahman, your relative, was a Muslim?
This country has to understand that its roots, especially when it comes to African American, is an Islamic root. African Americans should not see that as just a religion. It should see it as part of its heritage. And the good thing about it, people respect each other here, in the midst of all of this diversity. So that's something that Chicago has, that we would say shows what it means when people from diverse culture all merge.
Artemus has a good point. Chicago is culturally very diverse, and it has a large Muslim community, big enough to justify this celebration of Arab culture. It's the second year running the city is celebrating its links with the Middle East. For those former slaves who fled the South a little over 100 years ago, the transformation of this city's soul would be unbelievable.
African Americans came to Chicago as part of one of the largest human migrations of the 20th century. They were leaving the segregated and racist South in search of a new life in what many hoped would be a promised land. And it was out of this experience that was born the first American Muslim movement, and it was known as the Nation of Islam.
In the 1930s, a radical idea began to spread through the cities of America. The idea that white people were irredeemably evil formed the cornerstone of the Nation of Islam, whose theology combined Islam and black nationalism. The nation's message appealed to African Americans who'd fled the bigotry of the South. By the 1950s, the nation had around 100,000 members, led by Elijah Muhammad.
They fool you by telling you, don't hate no one. You should tell them, what the hell have you been doing for me?
But what gave the nation some credibility were high-profile members, including the boxer Cassius Clay, who took the name Muhammad Ali, and the radical, charismatic activist Malcolm X.
The racialist never understands a peaceful language. The racialist never understands the nonviolent language.
But in 1965, after leaving the movement, Malcolm X was assassinated. Defection soared, and after Elijah Muhammad died, most of the membership converted to mainstream Islam. Louis Farrakhan attempted to revive the movement and its racial policies in 1981.
When they start killing black people wholesale, nobody cares.
But today, the nation's membership is small, its rituals border on idolatry, and its message is barely recognizable to most Muslims.
They challenge white supremacy.
I'm on a bit of a pilgrimage south of Chicago to meet a man who's had a profound effect on the story of Islam in America. He's the son of Elijah Muhammad, but he led the largest single conversion to mainstream Islam that America has ever seen.